finding work. As I begin this, I just want to say that I have been teaching at Arbor for I've been teaching at Arbor for 13 years, and I taught at Taylor University for 9 years before that. So I've done a lot of thinking about why I work and why I work in English and why I teach English and why I love language. But I've never had an opportunity to really write about it and then offer it to colleagues and students who can respond to it and participate with me in making meaning out of why we work. So this is a joy to be able to talk to you today. And what I want to do at the beginning is divide you into groups. I'll let you self-select. 2 or 3 work best together. And the question I want you to answer is, list the top 5 reasons why you would say Americans in general work. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Come up with the top 5. Okay, sounds like you've got some answers here. So spit them out. Top left, you guys at the back. Give me one reason. Alyssa's group. Status. Status, okay. You want to be somebody. Somebody else.
Money.
Back over here. Money, of course. You gotta have money in order to live, after all. And it costs a lot of money to go to college, you gotta get that money back somehow. Somebody else? Yeah.
I'd say social norm.
What does that mean?
Like, if you're kind of a downtime, you don't have it.
Okay, good, so it's a social norm, the expectation that everybody does it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay? Yes, Thomas.
The sense of like being needed, so if you don't show up to work, people need you to be there.
Ah, okay, so being necessary, being needed. Somebody's going to notice if you're not there, so you matter. Good, yeah,
I think work creates like meaning or purpose for life.
okay. All right, so we're thinking about Americans in general over here. Why do Americans work? Are you satisfied with that list? Professors? Are you satisfied with that list? Okay, so let's go on to listing top 5 reasons why Christians work. See if you think they're different. Okay, so are there answers that you like? Give me your best reason. Group right there in the middle. Jordan and Ben's group.
We had a lot of jokes about
Why we work, why we don't think about why we work.
yeah. Sometimes we put like those same ones on the left side, just in Christian language. It's
Okay.
like make them sound like they're more Christian, but a lot of times they're the same motivation. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing you say there's not much difference over on this list. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Somebody else. You guys in the front.
Leading others to that.
What's that?
Leading others to that.
Leading others. Okay. Somebody else. Okay. I got a caller in. You're calling. Yeah.
Influence the world around you, like either like you said,
Okay.
a politician makes laws and gives Christian influence.
Yes. Okay. Bring about the civil society, the Christian civil society. Good. Yeah.
Like exploring your God-given talents and seeing what He's calling you to do.
Okay. Good. So you're exercising, exploring. Your challenge for the kingdom of God. Nice. Anybody else? Yeah.
To serve.
To serve. What do you know? Service. Servanthood. Service and servanthood here. Show up. All right. Anything else? Yes.
God commanded it.
Okay, God commanded it. In Genesis, He commands Adam and Eve to exercise dominion over the earth. Okay. In our worst moments of life, let's face it, the zombie job can lurk in the dark recesses of our imaginations. So I am agreeing with you that sometimes the Christian reasons are the same as the other reasons, but we're going to explore just where we fall, how we can refine our reasons as Christians for working, and how we can avoid the zombie life of work, where we die at work rather than die to work. So the zombie job can lurk in the dark recesses of our imaginations, haunting us with images of hollow men and hollow women, creeping through offices myopically intent on numbers, letters, lists, formulas, equations, the kind of keyboard crunching, mind-numbing dullness that deadens our spirits. Worse yet, in this nightmare, the hours drag on endlessly for days, months, and years, but we suffer the dreadland of this twilight kingdom to pay off debt and accumulate retirement options. The challenging adventure we had hoped for when we trained for a particular occupation has withered in this reverie anyway, into a pale, red-eyed resolve to survive. And yet, despite our dread, we doggedly pursue our dream of meaningful, life-giving work. In college, we slog through classes and internships, hoping above hope that training will give way to miraculously satisfying jobs, and hoping above hope that we're not turning into zombies in the process. What is there to save us from such a soul-deadening life? Dorothy Sayers posits a gospel of work grounded in God's nature itself. God is essentially creative. The story through which God reveals himself to us begins with the creative act. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The first verb of Scripture is the strongest action verb, to create. The first action we see God take is to create. The Nicene Creed recounts Jesus as a fundamental presence in God's creative work. Jesus is God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, of one being with the Father. Through him all things were made. Made in the image of God then, made to be like Christ, it is human beings' nature to create. We share in God's creative nature. In fact, creativity is such a critical aspect of humanity that to deny it is to deny part of what it is to be human. Dorothy Sayers' gospel of work is that our work must allow people to fulfill their vocation by being creative, or else it cheats them of their essential humanity. In other words, we must create or become less than human. Sayers' detective Harriet Vane muses in the novel Gaudy Night that to be true to one's calling, whatever follies one might commit in one's emotional life, that was the way to emotional peace. Later, Harriet remarks, when you get the thing dead right and know it's dead right, there's no excitement like it. It makes you feel like God on the seventh day. For a bit, anyhow. What I like about this is that Harriet's not referring to writing poetry or composing music, typical creative tasks. She's solving a mystery that's haunting a woman's college. Her work is detection, and doing it effectively is her creative gift. In other words, our particular giftedness is our creative work. We don't have to dance ballet, play guitar on stage, or sling paint to exercise creativity. Sayers also describes work in its creative vitality as the outward and visible sign of a creative reality. Such sacramental language should encourage us in regarding our work as a sacramental act. In her essay, Vocation and Work, she goes so far as to assign our work a redemptive measure, as it is the creative activity that can redeem the world. The upshot of this claim is that fulfilling our unique vocation, doing the thing we're uniquely made to do, serves the creation in such a way that God's work on earth is forwarded. Steve Jobs said, on hearing Yo-Yo Ma play the cello, "Your playing is the best argument I've ever heard for the existence of God, because I don't really believe a human being could do that alone." Finding our vocation brings us to full creative vitality. It gives our soul life. It fulfills God's intention for our gifts, and in some way forwards God's kingdom on earth. Yet we have to admit that work doesn't always give us life. It can drain us and frustrate us as often as it vitalizes. In fact, we sometimes give our lives to jobs that actually go against our value system without realizing it, like you've noticed. Even in the church, we can work for all the wrong reasons. In her 1947 essay, Why Work?, Sayers suggests that generally in the West, we're accustomed to value our work in terms of the money it generates. She's quick to remind us that what does it pay is the wrong question. If we work only to earn money, and you know this, then it's an end in itself, a dead end, soul deadening, because comfort and leisure don't make us happy. And although we can say that, we can still find ourselves doing just that. We work longer hours to secure leisure funds in America, to buy a fancy boat or the glitzy vacation package, but wear ourselves out playing hard. We hate Mondays, we exhaust ourselves on a squirrel cage that hopes to secure happiness. Consider this parable. A wise man is relaxing in the shade of a tree by a large, beautiful lake. Playing his guitar, he's got a fishing pole beside him, and it's extended into the lake. So a businessman walks up to him and says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm waiting for a fish to pass by." The businessman asks, "Have you seen anyone else around the lake lately?" The wise man replies, "He hasn't seen anyone else for weeks." So spotting his opportunity, the businessman advises that he should build himself a boat, cast a net into the lake, and then sell the surplus fish at the market. The wise man asks, "And then what should I do?" The businessman replies he should then use the profits to build himself a bigger boat to catch more fish. "And then what should I do?" "Well, you could build a fleet of vessels and hire a crew of people to help you catch even more fish." "And then what would I do?" The businessman proclaims, "Oh, you could be rich and you could retire early." "And then what would I do?" And the businessman replies, "Well, you could sit by the lake and play your guitar and catch fish." So, if leisure and comfort the goal, then hey, we can really forego the work and take the leisure. But of course, we have to work to bring home the bacon, as you've noted. There is some necessity here. But what we have to remember is that economic necessity always stands secondary to another claim upon us, given the fact that we're creatures of a creator. The first claim on us follows from God's nature and the creation. Thus, we should consider a potential job in terms of the end it serves. Rather than what does it pay, we should begin with the question, is it good? Does this work serve a good? Is it an aspect of creation that warrants cultivation? Does it promote the good of something or someone? An individual, a group, or a cause? Does it answer a human need or speak to a human longing? In other words, does it need doing? How do we determine whether a job needs doing? Basically, there are two sources of real wealth. Nature, the stuff we have to work with, and human labor, the effort that we exert upon nature to produce something. Jobs related to agriculture and ecology obviously draw on the fruits of the earth to serve aspects of nature. But a plethora of consumer goods not directly related to the earth are also important. The car industry, for example. Transportation is a good, after all. The question about car production should go further than profit margin and shareholder gains to issues of employee wages and benefits, working conditions, and also the quality of the product and its relationship to the community and environment. Questions such as, does this product deplete natural resources or put harmful chemicals into the environment are important. Asking about a product's efficiency record, about how long it will last, is also helpful. Does it perform its function reliably with satisfying results, or does it figure in a program of planned obsolescence? Would fewer cars or more public transportation in densely populated regions actually offer more humane living conditions? The question, is it worth doing, can be determined by whether it serves a good. That question should be accompanied by another one as well, the question of whether the work is good in itself. Ultimately then, the worth of, the value of the job should be assessed not in terms of cost or pay, but in terms of what the thing in itself is worth. The question of intrinsic value goes beyond the treadmill of production and consumption to absolute terms of a Christian worldview that begins with absolute values. Because we see ourselves as creatures submitted to a sovereign creator, Christians look outside ourselves for the meaning of experience. We see the world in theological terms that take precedence over a secular economic paradigm of work. The absolute value I'm referring to here is the intrinsic worth of our work well done. If the secular paradigm regards the value of the person in terms of what she does, gives her status, gives her a paycheck, then her meaning lies in that status and that paycheck, as you've noticed, meeting the social norm. Therefore, the goal of life becomes those goods, status, social norm, meeting expectations, money, which assumes the material world is our primary reality. The material world is the only thing that must be taken into account. However, such a philosophy of materialism denies spiritual reality as ultimate. For us, being created in God's image acknowledges that our soul is the eternal part of us and the source of our uniqueness. Therefore, we are intrinsically valuable, and our work with the creation is also intrinsically valuable. One essential question about our work, then, is it good? Have we done it well? Our reward comes not in dollars, but in knowing that we have honored a particular aspect of the creation by exercising our human labor, our creativity upon it, as well as we possibly can. The only Christian work, after all, is work well done. No job poorly planned and executed honors the Creator. There's no Christian music or Christian book unless it's well composed or well performed or well written. As Sayers admits, the worst religious films I ever saw were produced by a company who chose its staff exclusively for their piety. Bad photography, bad acting, and bad dialogue produced a result so grotesquely irreverent that the pictures could not have been shown in churches without bringing Christianity into contempt. Furthermore, she insists that a building must be good architecture before it can be a good church. A painting must be well painted before it can be a good sacred picture. Work must be good work before it can call itself God's work. Thus, work done as an excellent example of its kind serves the creation and points to its creator. Well, if work is good in itself, if it's intrinsically valuable, worth doing because it serves a human need and honors God because it's done excellently, we have ample reason to pursue it, a right reason to work. But we also have to ask, does it exercise our faculties, our gifts and abilities to the fullest? Because work can make us more fully whole, more fully ourselves. God made us to do the thing that gives us spiritual, mental, and physical satisfaction. This kind of work could become a prayer, the medium through which we offer ourselves to God. When we're fortunate enough to find work that is our work, it changes the goal from getting paid to working for our fulfillment and reward. It becomes the measure of our life, as long as society gives us enough return to do the work properly, of course. It only follows that we need to find the work we are uniquely gifted for. Not the highest paycheck, but the highest level of satisfaction. Bigger is not always greater, more is not always better. Numbers in church do not always imply more spiritual success or satisfaction, for instance. The joy of work that fits our giftedness is that in doing it, we're becoming what we are created to be. We're becoming what we already are. Right work for the right reason, in the right way, exercises the strengths God gave us and calls out the particular beauty already latent in us, waiting to be developed. In our beginning, God had a particularly beautiful, breathtaking human being that He hoped we would become. Our life is a chance to grow into the fullness of that person. And work that exercises our gifts and abilities moves us toward that ideal being we were made to be. That's the joy of being in a Christian liberal arts university. You are joining together with other people who agree with your starting point of creation, being created in the image of God, creativity, and being given to us to draw out who we are, who God hopes we become, and an opportunity to be able to use that creativity for the rest of our lives and continue to grow as we use it into the persons that God is helping us become, that He had in mind in the beginning. But at college, you have an opportunity to be exposed through your general education, exposure to the disciplines. You get to exercise things that your skills that you may not have been called out of you before. You get an opportunity to explore what kinds of things you're good at, and then you get lots of feedback. You're with all these people who are doing the same thing, who are your age. You have people who have gone there before you and seen other people go through this process. It can help shape you. And so this is your opportunity to discover what it is that you're suited for, what it is that's going to be satisfying, that's going to be serving the kingdom. Of course, the culture doesn't recognize that reality that I just described. That being created in God's image predisposes our nature for work that needs to be performed by us for God's glory. We have to admit that parents' expectations and economic pressures militate against the importance of matching the worker with the work for the good of society. But if we drudge through tasks in order to receive a paycheck at the end of the day, we recognize that frustration, despair, anger, and boredom is a formula for a shoddy, lackluster culture. We know we don't want the zombie job. We dread living in a zombie society. So how do we discover work we're uniquely gifted for? The practice of spiritual discernment may be helpful here. Discovering what God has made us to do requires some vocational assessment. As I look back over my successes and failures to this point in my life, what do I notice? Where have I excelled? Where have I felt energized and joyful in the task at hand? What are my gifts, my loves, my longings? Perhaps a mentor or spiritual director can help us see what skills and abilities God has placed in us. Remembering that every limitation or weakness also sounds a unique note on the scale of our personality. The places where we don't succeed, even our failures, for instance, direct us toward the abilities that we do have. I think we only discover what we are in God's eyes by seeking conversation with the divine, by being in relationship with God. And other people can help move us to understanding who we are, but we find the fullest understanding of it in contemplation and contemplative prayer. The practice of contemplative prayer can help because in contemplation, we're seeking to listen to God's voice. Discursive prayer is talking to God, helping us attend to the holy. But waiting on God in a submissive posture trains us to discern which desires to follow. We're sure to notice desires that seem natural to us, not obviously or necessarily holy. But what are we drawn to that we wouldn't necessarily recognize as God-given? What do we enjoy doing? Some lessons can come to us from history, and my lessons are from 19th century and 20th century people in Britain. But Thomas Hardy was a novelist who never went to Oxford or Cambridge, like the people who he was competing with to be published. And he was trying to write poetry, he was trying to write novels, and it wasn't until he began to write about his villages of Lower Bockhampton and Higher Bockhampton. They don't sound very important because they weren't. They were just little tiny villages of very obscure people. They were rural people in England, and he was steeped in their stories because his mother was a storyteller, and all her life she told him stories, and then he knew these people to tell stories about, and he had his own family heritage and everything in that. The generations of his family who had lived in this little tiny place in Dorset, England. And it wasn't until he wrote a story that was really a novella about those people that he knew, that he really found his gift. That novel was the novel that made it, and it was popular. And so he realized, oh, I find my voice when I find out, when I write about the places I know. I find out who I am just by looking around me. He found his voice. C.S. Lewis admits in his preface to That Hideous Strength, and it's about a college environment. He said, I selected my own profession to depict in this novel, not of course because I think fellows of colleges are likely to be thus corrupted, but because my own is the only profession I know well enough to write about. He wrote about what he knew. And Charles Darwin, interestingly enough, went to Cambridge and to take a degree for the church. He was going to be a pastor for his profession. And he was quite a disappointment to his headmaster when he was in high school, and he didn't distinguish himself at all in college. But he was 25 years old, already out of college, before he accepted his invitation to spend 2 years collecting specimens on this ship, the HMS Beagle, that went around the world. So he spends 2 years noticing the flora, the fauna, all the animals, everything that he could go out and collect when the ship stopped, and that was his hobby to this point. And he discovers that on this voyage, the work of the naturalist is his true work, and he began to write then and pursue his theory of natural selection from there. But he didn't find his work for a long time. So, what I'd like you to do is turn to the person next to you and tell them what you're passionate about. We'll start there. What you feel most passionate about in life. What energizes you most right now?
I mean, I guess you could say sport is
are the things that you're passionate about connected at all to things that you know and love? Think about that for a minute with the person that you just talked to. Does that make sense? Can you read that? What do you know? You know, what do you know and love to know? And is that connected to what you're passionate about? Did you just describe the same thing, or is it two different things? Okay, are they related to each other? The things that you know and love, are they the things that you're also passionate about doing? It's just a way to think about what what's going to be your niche? Where are you going to find yourself? What's leading you? Not that you have to choose your life's work right now, but it's just ways to think about what you are, what you're majoring in, the road you're taking. Because those are the things, what we're passionate about, and the things that we already know can go together. We can put them together. The things that we feel are leading us. Sometimes we think, well, this is the thing I love, but this is the thing I have to do for work. And they actually can come together. So knowing that God has created each of us uniquely to do a task no one else can do in the same way should bring us some relief in this search for the right work. We can take heart that we do have something to offer and trust God to bring it out. Maybe we even choose what we feel is the vocation for us at the present time, and then later move on from it. That doesn't mean we got it wrong, just because we go into a job and we change jobs. We can trust God to use all the experiences that we have, all our choices to transform us, and recognize we're developing into that person He hopes we become. We don't expect to remain in the same job all our lives either in this modern, postmodern, fluid world where analysts say students will have 19 different jobs on an average, and at least one of them will be out of the country. So you're not going to be working in one specific job, but you can be shaping your life's work, vocationally as something more general even. Probably the best way to know what we're suited for, what vocation we're suited for, and what will best exercise our gifts is to practice discernment. So what is spiritual discernment? It's not something that's learned overnight, and it's something that really does take practice. Here are three ways we can pursue discernment, three different things to do. We can pray, and sometimes we get a sense that we just know what's right. We know the direction to take. There isn't any question in our minds. And we pursue that until it's time to move on. Another thing we can do is list the pros and cons, list the advantages and disadvantages of a particular vocation for us, and pray over our list, not just once, but keep coming back to it, and waiting for how we feel God leading us, what we hear. Or we can image ourselves in each particular scenario. We have several different choices, or we have two different choices. We can imagine ourselves doing this job and pay attention to notice how we feel, what particular feelings come up when we're imagining a particular job. Anxiety, distrust, uncertainty, if we notice that those surface, we can take that as an indication of what we're shaped for. Maybe it's not that. Or if we feel peace, we feel confidence, we feel some sense of assurance, we can notice that. Fair enough, we can pray and listen and notice, but what do we do when the thing we feel suited for doesn't make a living? That's another question. What if the thing we're really drawn to doesn't have money attached to it? You can't make a living from this. That's sometimes a reality. We can think I love to design or draw or sing or dance or write or play tennis, but it doesn't pay. What do I do then? One possibility is to work in a closely related field and then do the thing that we love on the side as a hobby. Volunteer or use our gifts in ministry. After all, the American poet Wallace Stevens worked an 8 to 5 in a business suit and wrote his poetry at home after work. Charles Williams, one of Lewis's literary colleagues who was a member of the Inklings, worked as an editor for the Oxford University Press by day and went home to write fiction by night. And much to Lewis's admiration, 7 novels of Christian mysticism and other works of literary criticism were produced that way by Charles Williams. When we do discover the work that suits us, work we were meant for, work that calls out the expression of our full self, work that shapes our selfhood, we realize that it's sacramental. In fact, all work, even secular work, can help redeem the world. Therefore, all work is sacred. Christians don't have to think of the so-called Christian vocation or Christian job as the only sacred work. Any work is potentially sacred, as long as it avoids the soul-denigrating or soul-destroying thing. But we can fall into the trap of validating church-related work or ministry as more admirable or more holy than the secular. Specifically, church-related work seems more obviously Christian. But can a restaurant or a movie be Christian? Actually, what makes a job Christian is the quality with which it's actually executed. Sayers reminds us frequently that a building must be good architecture before it can be a good church. Again, a painting must be well painted before it can be a good picture. Therefore, work must be good work before it can call itself God's work. Sayers urges the church to remember that every maker and worker is called to serve God in his profession or trade and not outside it. The question isn't so much sacred or secular as it is, what am I suited for? What calls me to it? Because all creation needs to be served. And as she notes, the only Christian work is good work well done. Okay, so far we have 4 reasons to work. One is to serve a good. What have we said so far? Two, to promote the good. Someone or something, to perform a task. Serve the work. This is to exercise our faculties to the fullest. One final reason is really the most important for Christians, and that is we should take a job on in order to serve the work itself. Frequently, when we describe the goal of work as service, it often gets translated to serving the community. Sayers warns us, though, that the community can inadvertently become the focus of our work and thereby falsify what we want to offer as a gift. How is that? Because when serving the community, we can take our eyes off the task to see how the community is measuring it. We can end up altering or reshaping what we're doing to get the response that we want, which isn't necessarily healthy for the outcome, is it? To ask, do they like me? Do they like my sculpture? Isn't helpful because we can end up trying to please the audience rather than striving to create something excellent. Remember, the work needs to be judged by its own standards rather than what people outside the discipline think. And work that's less than quality work serves neither God nor the community. Done for the wrong reasons, it only serves mammon. I love that expression of Thomas Carlyle's. He said that the Victorians who were working in the factories and being captains of industry and serving, serving status and making money were like Philistines, seeking the mammon of money. And one thing about Thomas Carlyle's story I love about him and work is that he was writing a history of the French Revolution. It was hundreds of pages long. And he was writing it by hand on paper. So he finishes it one night early in the morning and goes to bed. He gets up in the morning late because he went to bed so late at night. And his manuscript is gone. His maid had burned it in the fireplace. And he spent the next few months rewriting the whole thing because it was worth doing, and he was going to do it well, and it was what was calling him to be done. And so he served the work. He wrote the whole thing over again. Can you imagine? That'd be like your computer crashing after you wrote your dissertation or something. 250-page book. But it's done for the wrong reasons. Our work shouldn't. We don't want to work just to please the community, or work to serve mammon or get money. But it's easy for us, once we imagine we're serving people, to assume they owe us something too. So we can think, do they like me? What do they think about it? And then I can begin to please the audience, or we can be working thinking, well, I did that for them. Well, I deserve something in return. And it's so subtle that we don't do it intentionally or even consciously necessarily, but we can think it's legitimate to expect a reward, a recognition, or at least some form of gratitude, and to resent not getting those. The only true way of serving the community is to be truly in sympathy with the community, to be oneself part of the community, Sayre says, and then to serve the work without giving the community another thought. Then the work will endure because it'll be true to itself. The more difficult thing to do is serve the work. Then our focus is the satisfaction of observing the quality of the work well done. So we're focused on how well it's being done, rather than what we get out of it. To serve the work is the thing. That's a lot harder, really, than to be thinking about what people want from me. It demands our best efforts and gives back what we put into it. Labor becomes love. Take this job and love it was what I was thinking I was going to title this talk. I like that because it suggests that to love is to labor at the good thing worth doing, the task that calls out our gifts, that moves us toward being more fully ourselves, nurtures some aspect of the creation and serves the work itself. In the end, the creation is served, the community is served, and love is extended into the universe. My spiritual mentor describes a vision of heaven in which explosions of creativity bounce off of each other. People are free to express their gifts fully in the afterlife. And that beauty sets off a constant chain of reactions that reverberate in new waves of inspiration. So people are sort of bouncing off of each other and completely engaged, completely consumed by what other people are doing in this expression of love. It's all about love, this creativity. And if we think of our work like that, we can see our work in the continuity with what our earthly life, in continuity with our heavenly life. Our earthly work can become our heavenly work and help bring about God's kingdom on earth now. I mean, we can actually experience that sense that the kingdom of heaven is now, and what my work is doing when I'm serving the work is going to last into eternity. If I think my work can participate in that kind of reality, it takes on a whole new dimension and becomes a beautiful thing. I don't know how much time I have left here. I was going to talk about how the world of language is what the humanities, and maybe English especially, but all the humanities, and in fact, all the disciplines in a liberal arts university work with language. We value language because it's the way God, we express God's image in us. His first action was to speak. He speaks the creation into being. And Jesus was there in the beginning, with God. And so Jesus is associated with the power of language to convey reality, to convey the truth. And so how important language is for us. And in our culture, it's a challenge to actually cultivate our language in such a way that it does express truth, that it gets to reality. We know from the temptation it is to become a zombie and just be like everybody else. Totally like whatever, really, because it isn't likely to, make a big dip, because unless it's for real, whatever. You know how easily we fall into this jargon, and texting language and email makes it so much easier not to work with language very intentionally. And so we fall into bad habits. Well, Mark Edmondson is just an English professor who wrote an article last summer in the Chronicle of Higher Education where he says, and he's not a Christian, but he's saying it's easy for us in our culture of technological uses of language to be spoken by language. What does that mean, to be spoken by language? It needs to be a vehicle for expression, this is his quote, and not a shaper of words. It means to rely on cliches and pre-formulated expressions. It means to be a channeler of ad speak, sports jargon, and the latest psychological babble. You sound not like a living man or woman, but like something much closer to a machine trying to pass for human. You never know how you feel or what you want in life, because the words at your disposal are someone else's and don't represent who you are and what you want. You don't and can't know yourself. You don't and can't know the world. As Christians, we want to counter the culture. And I know that's easy to say. It takes a lot of intentionality to make our language match our experience and match reality, to try to represent the truth. We know all too well the habits we can fall into, and that becomes part of our zombie nightmare, really. That the uses of technology, lazy uses of technology anyway, can start to eat our brains away. So serving the work in the humanities is serving the word, which requires the diligence to hone vocabulary. And there are lots of ways that we can do that. I had a friend in college that used to read the dictionary, you guys, and we laughed at her. It was absurd. She was reading the dictionary when we were doing other things, like having fun, on the floor. She had her dictionary out. Well, the joke is on us, because she's making more money than any of the rest of us, because she pays so much attention to words. She works in Chicago and has her own business as a learning disability specialist, and she tests kids, and then she works with them, and she has other people working for her now, and she loves it. She's doing really well. Not that money is the the sign that all is well, or that she did the right thing, but it's just funny to me that I used to laugh at the idea of reading the dictionary. Now I'm somebody who loves the dictionary too, and wish I had a long time before I actually started to pay attention to it. But anyway, so as I conclude, I'll say I've been describing, all the reasons to work, and they're really not the reasons that we listed for how Americans work. There's a little bit how Christians work, but these reasons to work really are fulfilling for us. They call out who God created us to be. They call us into the fullest life that we can have. So we want to be the people that God hopes we become. We want to be becoming that. I think these reasons for work are great ideals to hold as we're choosing our vocation and shaping ourselves for the task ahead. I mean, your work right now is to do well in your major, in your chosen field, so that you can go out and really be excellent at it later. But our task is to find the thing God's created us to do in a way that no one else can because of our unique gifting. So you're following this list, and you're choosing a vocation, and you're feeling like this is what God has led you to. But there are lots of other people who are going to be in your major as a Christian, doing the same kind of vocation. Remember that you do even that job uniquely. It's what God's created you to do, because nobody else in your office, or nobody else, in your group of fellow colleagues does that task like you can do it. God made you to do it specifically in a way nobody else can. So that's really the goal for each of us individually, is to find that sense. We have our ideals and what we're shooting for, but to remember that we are loved, to let God love us, into doing the thing that nobody else can do for his kingdom but us. And then serve the integrity of that work with all our heart, soul, and mind, because that work deserves cultivation, because it promotes the good, because it's worth doing well, because that work calls for the fullest expression of our gifts. Avoiding the zombie job is our hope and inclination, and God suits us for something far greater than brain-destroying work. You're in the right place at Spring Arbor University to discover that brain-empowering, soul-empowering work that God suited you for. May you leave Spring Arbor dying to work, not dying from work. Thank you. If you have any responses, I'm here. I'd be happy to talk. Does anybody have a question or anything specific that you were thinking that would be helpful for everybody? Okay, well, I'll hang around and get your free coffee coupons. It's buy one, get one free. Buy one, get one half off.